The ship moved through space like a silent shadow. The U's vengeance was large and powerful, but now it seemed quiet, holding its breath. Captain Park Minho stood on the bridge. He looked at the main screen, his face showing no emotion. The planet below was called Haven Prime. It was supposed to be a symbol of human hope among the stars. Now it was a dark and silent grave. "Orbit achieved, Captain," said Commander Leuna. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. She looked at her screens, her fingers moving quickly. No energy readings. No signals. Scans show extensive structural damage on the surface. Minho just nodded. He had seen the first reports. A Cathari fleet had arrived 2 days ago. They had sent no demands. They had issued no warnings. They had simply opened fire on the colony's defenses and then moved to the surface. The last transmission from the colony governor was a scream of static. Then nothing. "We will go down," Minho said. His voice was low. "Sergeant Kim's team is ready. I will join them." "Sir, the environmental readings are unstable. There could be residual radiation," Una said, looking up at him. "All the more reason to see it for myself," Minho replied. He turned and walked to the elevator. He needed to see it, not on a screen. He needed to stand on the ground where it happened. The shuttle ride down was quiet. Sergeant Kim Tae-yun sat across from him. The soldier's armor was scratched and worn. He had been on leave on Haven Prime just a month ago. He had friends there, a family he used to eat with. He stared at the floor of the shuttle, his jaw tight. The shuttle landed with a soft bump. The ramp lowered, and the smell hit them first. It was not just smoke. It was the sharp, ugly smell of melted metal and plastic, and underneath it, something sweet and rotten. The air was cold and still. Minho stepped out. The colony was gone. What was left were skeletons of buildings, blackened and broken. The streets were filled with rubble. Here and there, something colorful could be seen, a child's toy. Piece of fabric from a curtain all covered in gray dust. Tae-yun's team spread out, their weapons ready, but there was nothing to fight. Only silence. They walked toward the main square. This was where the colony had held its festivals. Minho had seen pictures. Lights, music, people laughing. Now, in the center of the square, was a pit. It was not a natural crater from an explosion. It was too neat, too wide. The edges were cut smooth by powerful tools. Minho walked to the edge and looked down. His stomach tightened. It was not a pit. It was a mass grave. Layers of bodies, piled without care. Men, women, children. Their faces were pale and still. They were not burned. They looked like they were sleeping, except for the unnatural angles of their limbs. They had been killed and collected and thrown here. This was not an attack. This was a clean dash up. Next to him, Tae-yun made a sound, a sharp intake of breath that was almost a sob. He turned away, his shoulders shaking. One of his soldiers put a hand on his arm. They didn't even... "Why?" Tae-yun whispered, his voice cracking. "They were farmers, engineers, teachers, my friend's little girl. She was 5. She wanted to be a pilot." He pointed a trembling finger toward the pit. Minho did not look where he pointed. He kept his eyes on the horrible scene, forcing himself to remember every detail. A soldier approached. "Sir, we've checked the residential blocks. No survivors. The Cathari used a neural toxin. It stops the heart. It's painless, quick. They wanted them dead, but they didn't want a messy fight." "Efficient," Minho said, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. They were efficient. He turned from the grave. His communicator buzzed. It was Dr. Choi Suman, calling from the ship's lab. Her face on the small screen was pale, her eyes wide behind her glasses. "Captain, I have finished the preliminary translation of the Cathari transmission we intercepted during the attack." "What did they say, Doctor?" She took a deep breath. It was not a military command. It was a declaration. They called it the final sanitization. They stated that humanity is a chaotic species. They said our emotions, our individualism, our rapid expansion. It is a disease, a sickness that threatens the order of the galaxy. They believe they are gardeners, pulling weeds. Her voice trembled with a mix of horror and anger. Haven Prime was not a military target. It was an experiment, to see how efficiently they could erase us. Minho felt a coldness settle in his chest, colder than the space outside his ship. This was not war. This was extermination. "Thank you, Doctor. Keep working." He closed the channel. He walked back to the shuttle, Taeyon following him like a ghost. The images would not leave his mind. The neat pit, the peaceful faces, the toy in the dust. Back on the Vengeance, the mood was a storm of quiet rage. The crew had seen the footage from the ground teams. The usual low hum of conversation was gone. People worked in silence, their movements sharp and precise. Minho went straight to the war room. Admiral Quan Jun was already there, waiting. The older man stood by the large window, looking at the stars. He had been a diplomat for most of his career. He had always argued for patience, for understanding, for building bridges. Minho placed a data chip on the table. The full report from the surface admiral. Quan turned. He did not reach for the chip. He had already seen enough. His face, usually kind and lined with smiles, was now like stone. He looked old and tired, but his eyes burned. "They left no one," Minho stated. "I know. They called it gardening. I know that too." Minho waited. The silence in the room grew heavy. Quan finally walked to the table and leaned on it, his knuckles white. "For 40 years, I have believed that any species capable of crossing the stars must also possess a soul, a conscience, that there is a line you do not cross." He looked up, his gaze locking with Minho's. "They have shown me I was wrong. There is no line for them. There is only a blank space on a map where they decide life should not be." He straightened up, his back rigid. "We have tried reason. We have tried treaties. We have tried to be civilized members of this galactic community." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quiet, final, and carried the weight of a world's grief. "That ends today. Now we stop being civilized." He tapped the table, activating a global command channel. Every ship, every base on Earth and beyond would hear him. "Attention, all units of the Unified Earth Defense Coalition. This is Admiral Quan. As of this moment, Condition Omega is in effect. All rules of engagement are suspended. All weapons restrictions are lifted. Our mission is no longer defense. Our mission is survival. And our survival now requires the absolute and permanent end of the Cathari threat. You are authorized to use any means, any weapon, any tactic to achieve this. We will not speak to them again. We will not offer them terms. We will show them the consequences of their philosophy." The message ended. The quiet on the bridge of the Vengeance was absolute. Then a new sound began. It was the low, powerful thrum of the main engines powering up to full military strength. It was the sound of shields activating at maximum. It was the sound of weapon systems coming online, one after another, a symphony of deadly intent. Captain Park Minho walked back to his command chair. He sat down. He looked at the image of Haven Prime, now just a dark orb on the screen. "Commander Yuna," he said, his voice steady. "Captain, set a course for the Cathari forward command post in the Cronus Belt. Maximum speed." A faint, cold smile touched Yuna's lips. It did not reach her eyes. A direct course, sir? They will see us coming from a long way off. Minho stared at the screen, at the memory of the grave. Good, he said. Let them see. The Vengeance cut through the dark space like a knife. Around it, the rest of the UEDC fleet moved in formation. They were not the clean, parade-ready ships of a month ago. Now they were all angles and sharp edges, with new weapon pods bolted onto their hulls like scars. Inside the Vengeance, the lights were a constant cool blue. The crew spoke in short, quiet sentences. The grief for Haven Prime had been packed away, frozen solid, and turned into fuel dot in the main briefing room. Captain Minho stood with his senior officers. A holographic star map glowed in the center of the table. Their target pulsed with a soft red light. A Cathari, listening post and resupply station in the Cronus Belt. It was a spidery structure of black metal, clinging to a large asteroid. It was not a major military base. It was a perfect test subject. Commander Yuna controlled the display. Her face was calm, but her eyes were focused and sharp. Standard doctrine would be a blockade or a focused assault on their shield generators, she said. Her fingers moved, and the hologram showed the predictable attack patterns. They will expect that. Their defenses are arranged to counter it. We are not following standard doctrine, Minho said, his voice flat. What do we have? Yuna allowed herself a small, thin smile. She switched the display. New schematics appeared, weapons that were once just theory or locked away in secure vaults. Project Gauntlet is now active. Primary tool for this engagement, the Resonance Disruptor. It does not fire a missile or a laser. It broadcasts a targeted energy pulse that matches the harmonic frequency of Cathari shield technology. Sergeant Taeyun, who was there to represent ground forces, frowned. You make their shields sing? You make them shatter, Yuna corrected. Like glass hit by the right note. Once the shields are down, we deploy the hunter drones. The hologram showed small, sleek vessels. They are controlled by a new combat AI. It learns. It observes enemy ship movements and predicts their next move. It does not get tired. It does not feel fear. It simply finds the most efficient path to destroy its target. Dr. Choi Suman spoke from the side of the room. She had been quietly listening. It is a weapon that fights without anger. That may be more frightening to them than any show of rage. Our goal is not to frighten them yet, Doctor, Minho said. Our goal is to confuse them, to break their understanding of how we fight, to make them doubt everything they think they know about us. He looked at the hologram of the spidery outpost. We will not just defeat them. We will unravel them. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Cronus Belt. The asteroid field was a chaotic mess of tumbling rocks and ice. The Cathari outpost detected them immediately. As predicted, their shields glowed to life, a shimmering green bubble around the structure. Their ships, sleek and insect-like, poured out of docks, forming a defensive line. On the bridge of the Vengeance, Minho watched them. Hold our position. Do not move into attack range. Their weapons are charging, Captain, a tactical officer said, his voice tense. Let them, Minho replied. He waited. He let the Cathari see them just sitting there, a silent wall of ships. He let their confusion grow. Why were the humans not attacking? What were they waiting for? After 5 long minutes, the Cathari lost patience. Their lead ship fired a bright lance of plasma. It streaked across the distance, meant to provoke a response. Now, Minho said quietly. Yuna tapped a command. From the belly of the Vengeance, a deep, almost musical hum reverberated through the ship. It was not loud, but it could be felt in the bones. A visible wave of distorted energy, like heat rising from a desert, rolled silently from the ship. It did not look dangerous. It moved slowly, passing through the asteroids without affecting them. It reached the Cathari defensive line. The green shields of the ships flared brightly for a second. Then they flickered. A high-pitched screaming sound echoed over the comms, translated from the Cathari frequencies. Their shields did not explode. They simply came apart, dissolving into showers of harmless green light. The Cathari ships were suddenly naked, their hulls exposed. For a moment, they hung in space, stunned. "Release the drones," Minho ordered. Hundreds of small hatches opened on the human ships. The hunter drones shot out, not like missiles, but like a swarm of intelligent wasps. They moved in a silent, coordinated cloud. The Cathari ships opened fire, but the drones were too fast, too small. The AI learned from the first missed shots. It calculated firing patterns, evasion routes. A drone would streak toward a Cathari engine, not to destroy it, but to fire a precise burst that crippled its power. Another would latch on to a weapons array and scramble its targeting computer. They worked together. 2 drones would harass a ship, driving it into the path of a third that delivered a killing blow to its bridge. It was not a battle. It was a dissection. The human capital ships had not fired a single shot from their main guns. They just watched. On the Cathari outpost, panic was setting in. They tried to recall their ships, to retreat into the station's heavier armor. But the drones followed them. Some even slipped into the open docking bays before the doors could close, causing havoc inside. Then UNIT activated the second phase. Their internal communications are a mess. Feeding them the packet. A different signal, not a weapon, was broadcast directly into the outpost's computer network. It was a data packet. It contained no virus, no damaging code. It was just a simple, repeating loop of data. It was the list of names. Every single colonist from Haven Prime. The names scrolled slowly, clearly, in the Cathari written language. Name after name after name. Men, women, children. It was projected onto every screen in the outpost. It played in the background of every comms channel. A quiet, endless roll call of the dead. The outpost's commander, a high-ranking Cathari known as a VOR, finally managed to open a hailing frequency to the Vengeance. His face, sharp and insect-like, appeared on the screen. His large, dark eyes showed confusion, not fear, yet human vessel. You employ unknown weapons. This is a violation of conventional warfare accords. You will cease immediately. Minho stood and walked to the screen. He looked at the alien, his own face empty. "There are no more accords," he said, his voice calm. "You ended them at Haven Prime. You are not fighting a military. You are fighting a consequence. You cannot win a war through tricks and noise," the VOR hissed. "This was not a war," Minho said. "This was a demonstration. You believe in efficiency, in clean, quiet death. We have learned. Watch." He nodded to Yuna. On the main viewer, they saw the swarm of drones suddenly pull back from the outpost. They regrouped in a perfect sphere in space. Then, as one, they turned their weapons on the few remaining crippled Cathari warships. They did not blast them apart. They carefully, methodically, sliced them into neat small pieces of scrap metal. It was slow. It was deliberate. It was the most inefficient way to destroy a ship, but it was done with absolute, terrifying control. The VOR watched, his confusion turning to a dawning horror. He was not seeing rage. He was seeing something colder. A machine-like precision turned against his own efficient people. The data packet continued to scroll names in the background of the transmission.minho leaned closer to the screen. "You have 1 hour to evacuate your personnel in escape pods. In 1 hour, we will reduce that outpost to dust. Not to capture it. Not to use it. simply so that it is no longer there. He cut the transmission. He did not wait for a reply. Back on the bridge, Sergeant Taeyan, who had watched everything, let out a long, slow breath. They looked lost. They are, Dr. Choi said softly from her station. She had been monitoring the Cathari communications. Their language is based on logic and hierarchy. All their words are about order and purpose. Right now, their communications are filled with words that have no clear meaning for them. Chaos, illogic. The pattern is broken. They do not know how to fight an enemy who fights like this. Minho returned to his command chair. He watched as the small white escape pods began to jettison from the outpost, fleeing into the asteroid field. He felt no satisfaction. Only the cold, steady hum of the ship around him, and the silent, scrolling list of names on a side screen. Move the fleet to position Delta, he said. Prepare the Singularity missiles for the final strike. Let's finish the lesson. The Cathari named Thoa Chalith sat in his escape pod, watching the sensors. The small craft was cramped and cold. Around him, the other pods from the Cronus outpost drifted like lost seeds in the dark of the asteroid belt. His mind, trained for order and clear purpose, churned in circles. The human weapons had not just beaten them. They had mocked them. They had turned Cathari efficiency into a flaw to be exploited. The silent, scrolling list of human names still felt burned into his thoughts. It was data with no tactical purpose. It was emotional noise, and it had been more disruptive than any bomb. His pod's crackled. A new signal, strong and clear, cut through the standard emergency frequency. It was not a human voice. It was a sound. A slow, deep, rhythmic beat of drums, followed by a long, mournful note from a single stringed instrument. It was human music. Funeral music. The Cathari had no such thing. Death was a removal of flawed components. This sound spoke of loss, of memory, of a sadness, so deep it became a song. It felt heavy, and it filled the silent pod with a strange pressure. Then a human voice spoke, using the Cathari trade language. It was a woman's voice, calm and clear. Vi-O-R Caleth. This is Commander Lee Yuna of the U's Vengeance. Your escape vector has been noted. You will be found in approximately 7 hours by a Cathari salvage vessel. Your survival is permitted. He stiffened. They were tracking him. They were allowing him to live. The insult was profound. Why? He transmitted back, the word sharp with anger. Why this performance? Performance? Yuna's voice came back, almost thoughtful. This is not a performance, VOR. This is context. The music is a dirge. It is for our dead on Haven Prime. We want you to hear it. We want you to understand what you took. You took futures. You took songs that will never be sung. You will now carry the sound of that loss with you. The transmission ended, leaving only the haunting music to play on a loop. Kyleth turned it off, but the silence that followed was now worse. He could still feel the echo of the drums. Meanwhile, the human fleet was on the move again. Their next target was not a military one. It was a Cathari logistical hub on a barren moon called Tylus. This was where food, fuel, and spare parts were stored for their frontier fleets. Destroying it would hurt them. But Captain Mino had a different idea. We do not destroy it, he told Sergeant Taeyan in the Vengeance's armory. Taeyan was checking his squad's armor, new stealth suits that absorbed radar and heat signatures. We take it, and we leave a message. Taeyan nodded. The grief in his eyes had been forged into a hard, sharp focus. Understood, sir. We'll be ghosts. The assault was silent and swift. Instead of a bombardment, the Vengeance deployed a focused electromagnetic pulse that disabled the moon base's external sensors and communications for 90 seconds. In that window, Talian's squad descended in black, unpowered drop pods that were nearly invisible. They landed on the dark side of the storage facility. The Cathari guards were disciplined, but they were watching the skies for ships, not the ground for shadows. The human soldiers moved like liquid night. They used targeted stun weapons that put the guards into a temporary, dreamless sleep. Not a single shot was fired. Not a single Cathari life was taken. Taeyon led his team into the main control room. 2 Cathari technicians looked up from their screens, their large eyes wide with shock. Before they could sound an alarm, soft thwip sounds filled the air, and they slumped over their consoles. Asleep. Place the markers, Taeyon ordered. His soldiers moved through the sterile, gray corridors of the base. They did not plant explosives. They placed small, solid plaques made of black stone on the walls, at intersections, on the doors of the main reactor. Each plaque was engraved with a single word in the Cathari language, and below it, a list of coordinates. The word was Haven. The coordinates were those of the destroyed human colony. They also left one other thing. On the commander's desk, Taeyon placed a simple data chip. Then, as quietly as they came, the squad retreated, collected their sleeping victims, and placed them gently outside the main entrance, and vanished back into the darkness. The electromagnetic interference cleared. The Cathari base woke up to chaos. They found their guards asleep. They found their systems untouched. And they found the plaques. Confusion turned to alarm. What did it mean? Were they bombs? Scanners showed no energy. Were they tracking devices? They seemed to be simple stone. The word haven meant nothing to most of them. But the coordinates were a known location, the sanitized human nest. The base commander, a tense VOR named Mrel, finally played the data chip. It showed a simple video. It was a recording from the surface of Haven Prime before the attack. Children were playing in a park, kicking a ball. Adults were talking at a market stall, laughing. The sun was shining. It was just a normal day. The video ended. Then text appeared in Cathari. You saw numbers. We see this. You hear silence. We hear their laughter. You created a grave. We remember home. We are in your walls now. We are in your silence. You are not safe. Back on the Vengeance, Dr. Choi monitored the Cathari communications from the tailless moon. The usual crisp, logical reports were gone. The signals were filled with hesitation, with requests for clarification. They are using new words, she told Minho and Yuna on the bridge, or old words in strange ways. They keep asking for the purpose of the intrusion. They cannot categorize it. It was not an attack. It was not espionage. It was a haunting. They report feeling observed, even though our forces are gone. The concept of a ghost, a persistent memory that brings fear, it does not exist in their culture. They have no framework for it. They are trying to file it under psychological warfare, but their definition of psychology is about logic and obedience, not fear of the unseen. Yuna looked at the main screen, which showed the tailless moon shrinking as they jumped away. Good. Fear of the unseen is the most basic fear there is. We have become the monster under their bed. Minho listened, his arms crossed. And our guest? Vaor Kyleth's salvage ship picked him up 20 minutes ago, Yuna said. He is already demanding a secure channel to the High Command. He is trying to explain what happened. His report is not logical. He is using words like echo and shadow. They will think he is damaged. He is, Minho said quietly. He is the first one to understand. He has heard the music. He will tell them we are not just fighting back. We are remembering. And we are making our memory their nightmare. The bridge was quiet for a moment. The tactic felt strange, even to some of the crew. It was not the honorable clash of fleets they had trained for. Sergeant Taeyeon walked onto the bridge, his stealth suit exchanged for his normal uniform. He had a smudge of gray moon dust on his cheek. "The markers are placed, sir." It felt strange. Leaving them alive. Minho looked at him. Was it harder than killing them? Taeyeon thought about the sleeping Cathari, about the plaques on the walls. He thought of the pit on Haven Prime. "No, sir," he said finally. It was not harder. It was colder. Killing ends something. This just sits there. It keeps asking a question they can't answer. "Exactly," Dr. Choi said. "You are not attacking their bodies. You are attacking their worldview. A broken bone heals. A broken idea might not." The Vengeance moved on, leaving the tailless hub intact, but psychologically poisoned. Behind them, the Cathari High Command was receiving 2 reports. One was a frantic, confusing account from Vio Kailath about human ghosts and haunting music. The other was a cold, official report from Talus about a flawless, bloodless intrusion and a message they did not comprehend. For the first time since they began their campaign of purification, the Cathari felt a sliver of something unsettling. It was not fear of a weapon. It was fear of a mind they could not predict, a purpose they could not chart, an enemy they fought with memories and shadows. The orderly garden of the galaxy now had a silent, unmovable stone in its center, and written on it was a name they had tried to erase: Haven. Admiral Quan Jun's office was the quietest place on Earth Command. The wall was a single, clear view of the blue planet below, but he did not see it. He stared at a different image on his desk screen. It was a live feed from the bridge of the Vengeance. Captain Minho's face was calm, waiting for orders. Behind him, the stars streaked by as the fleet traveled at maximum speed. "The Cronus Belt and Talus Moon operations are complete, Admiral," Minho reported. "Enemy combat capability reduced by an estimated 15% in that sector. Their morale and cohesion are showing significant disruption." Quan nodded slowly. He had seen the reports, heard Dr. Choi's analysis of the Cathari's growing confusion. It was working. Their new way of war was breaking the enemy's mind. But a cold calculus had been forming in his own mind for days. A terrible final step. Breaking their outposts was not enough. To truly stop a gardener, you did not trim the weeds. You had to stand in the garden and show them you could burn it all. "Captain," Quan said, his voice a dry rustle. "Change your fleet's course, immediately." On the screen, Minho's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "New destination, sir?" "The Cathari homeworld. Cathar Prime." A beat of absolute silence passed. On the Vengeance Bridge, Commander Yuna, who was listening, froze. Sergeant Taeyeon, who was nearby, looked up sharply. Even Dr. Choi turned from her station, her face pale. "Admiral," Minho said carefully, "their home fleet is 5 times the size of ours. Their planetary defenses are the most advanced in their empire. A direct assault would be catastrophic for us." Who said anything about an assault? Quan replied. A sad, heavy smile touched his lips. "We are not going to fight them, Captain. We are going to show them something. Plot the course. I will send you the full operational parameters." Quan out. The transmission ended. On the Vengeance, the silence was broken only by the steady beeps of the console. "He's lost his mind," a young ensign whispered from the navigation station. Minho turned, and his gaze was like ice. "He has not. He has found the only move left." He looked at Yuna. "You heard the Admiral. Plot the course for Cathar Prime. Maximum speed. Battle stations, but weapons are to remain at standby." The journey took 3 days. 3 days of tense, silent preparation. The crew trained, But for what, they did not know. Dr. Choi and her team worked non-stop, analyzing every known piece of data about Cathar Prime, its culture, its infrastructure, its social hierarchy. They were not looking for military weak points. They were looking for pressure points, for the things a civilization needed to breathe. When the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sight took everyone's breath away. Cathar Prime was a beautiful world. Larger than Earth, it was swirled with blues and greens and vast, orderly patterns of land that spoke of careful, ancient cultivation. A network of space stations, shipyards, and defense platforms orbited it like a glittering, deadly necklace. The Cathari home fleet, thousands of ships strong, began to mobilize instantly, moving to form an impenetrable wall between the humans and their world. Hundreds of hailing requests bombarded the Vengeance. Angry, demanding, confused. Minho ignored them all. "Execute Phase 1, he ordered. From the human fleet, a volley of missiles streaked out. But they did not arc towards the planet or the fleet. They flew in wide, fast circles, attaching themselves to key points in the orbital network, the main power relays for the planetary shield generators, the control hubs for the defense platforms. The primary communication satellites they did not explode. They unfolded. They became small, stubborn machines that latched on and began emitting a complex, scrambling signal. On the main viewer, the brilliant energy of the planetary shield shimmered, flickered, and died. The defense platforms went dark, their weapon barrels freezing in place. The communication network fell into static. The Cathari home fleet surged forward, ready to destroy the insolent humans. But then they stopped, because the human ships had not moved an inch closer. They just hung there in a perfect, menacing line. Now Minho opened a channel. He broadcasted on every frequency, wide and clear. The face that appeared was not his. It was Admiral Quan Jun, back on Earth. He looked old and tired and utterly certain. "People of the Shifari High Command," Quan began. His voice was translated instantly into their language. "We are speaking to you from the orbit of your homeworld. Your shields are down. Your orbital defenses are disabled. Your home fleet is watching." He paused, letting the sheer, impossible reality of the situation sink in. They were not attacking. They were just there, inside their defenses, holding a knife to their throat without moving a muscle. "We could bombard your cities now," Quan continued calmly. "We could shatter your shipyards. We could turn your beautiful, orderly world into a second Haven Prime." He let the threat hang in the silent space. "We will not." On the bridge of the Vengeance, Sergeant Taeyan clenched his fists. "Why not?" His face seemed to scream. "After what they did?" "You do not understand why," Quan said, as if hearing him. "You believe we are emotional, chaotic, unpredictable, so let us be predictable. Our action today is based on a single, simple logic. You taught us that genocide is a viable tool. We are now demonstrating that we have learned that lesson, and that we are better at it than you are." A new image replaced Quan's face on every Cathari screen. It was the list. The endless scrolling list of names from Haven Prime. But now, next to each name was a piece of data. A picture. A short video clip. A fingerprint. A voice recording saying their own name. It was no longer just a list. It was a galaxy of stolen souls, each one unique, each one vivid and real. "This is what you destroyed," Quan's voice said over the heartbreaking display. "You thought you were removing numbers. You were wrong. You created martyrs. You created purpose. You created us as we are now." The list faded. Quan's face returned, harder now. "Here is the new reality. Your survival is no longer your choice. It is ours. We allow you to live today. We will continue to allow you to live only under the following conditions: the immediate and total surrender of your military, the dissolution of your ruling high command, the opening of all your territories to human oversight. You will dismantle your empire, yourselves, under our observation. A final data packet was transmitted. It was a single, simple file. A live, real-time firing solution from the Vengeance's main weapon. It was aimed not at a city, but at the Great Spire, the ancient, symbolic heart of Cathari government and culture. The targeting computer showed the power of the shot, the thermal bloom, the complete and utter vaporization of the tower, and everything for miles around. You have 6 hours to transmit your unconditional surrender on this channel, Quan said. If you do not, we will not attack your fleet. We will not invade your world. We will simply erase the spire, and then, every hour after that, we will erase another symbol of your order. We will dismantle your civilization piece by piece from right here, until you agree, or until there is nothing left but ashes and fear. The transmission ended. On Caithar Prime, panic of a kind they had never known erupted. This was not a battle. It was a checkmate. The humans had not won a war. They had changed the game. The High Command argued, some for fight, some for flight. But the cold logic was inescapable. The humans were not in their home to die bravely. They were there to kill, precisely, surgically, and without ever setting foot on the planet. It was the ultimate, terrible expression of the efficiency that Cathari worshipped. On the Vengeance, the crew waited. The silence was enormous. Minho watched the tactical display, the frozen Cathari fleet. The vulnerable world below. They'll call it a bluff, Yuna whispered. It is not a bluff, Minho said, his eyes on the targeting data for the Great Spire. Admiral Quan made the only choice that could end this forever. He looked into the abyss they opened, and he said, "We will not jump in. We will own the edge, and we will push you to the very brink of it instead." He turned to look at his crew. Seeing the conflict on their faces, the hunger for vengeance fighting with the horror of what they were about to do. "This is what it means to stop being civilized," he said, not to them, but to himself. "It means making the choice they could not. It means having the power to destroy, and using it only to force a peace so harsh that war becomes unthinkable." He watched the clock. The 6 hours had begun. The clock on the bridge of the Vengeance counted down the final minutes. The numbers glowed with a soft, relentless light. 5 hours and 58 minutes had passed since Admiral Quan's ultimatum. In those hours, the Cathari home fleet had not moved. Their ships hung in space, weapons hot but paralyzed. To attack was to guarantee the destruction of the Great Spire. To do nothing was to surrender. Their entire logic, their culture of cold decisions, was trapped. Captain Minho sat in his command chair. He did not fidget. He did not pace. He was a statue of focused calm. Inside, he felt nothing but a vast, cold emptiness. He watched the feed from the surface of Caithar Prime. The Great Spire was a needle of dark crystal reaching into the sky, surrounded by the orderly, sweeping lines of the capital city. It was beautiful in its own severe way. He thought of the rubble of Haven Prime. There was no beauty there anymore. Only dust and memory. Any change in their fleet formations? He asked, his voice quiet. "None, sir," Commander Yuna replied. Her eyes were fixed on her tactical screens. "They are holding position. Communications between their capital and their fleet commanders are chaotic. They are arguing. There is no clear voice of command." Sergeant Taeyang stood near the weapons station. He kept glancing at the image of the spire, then at the clock, then at Minho. His jaw was tight. "They're going to call our bluff, sir." "They have to. It's what they would do." "It is not a bluff, Sergeant," Minho said, without looking at him. In 1 minute and 20 seconds, if we do not receive their surrender code, you will fire the main gun. You will follow the targeting solution exactly. Taiyuan swallowed hard. He had fired weapons in battle before. This was different. This was an execution, an act of cultural annihilation from a distance. He gave a stiff nod. Yes, sir. Dr. Choi Suman watched from her science station. She was not looking at the tactical displays. She was watching the biometric feeds from the Cathari capital, stolen by their earlier data intrusions. Stress hormones were spiking. Brainwave patterns showed catastrophic levels of indecision. They are breaking, she said softly. Not as individuals, but as a system. Their hierarchy has no protocol for this. They are trying to compute an illogical equation, how to obey their prime directive of survival when the only logical military response ensures their destruction. 10 seconds, Yuna announced. Her finger hovered over a key that would lock the firing sequence. The bridge was silent. Every crew member held their breath. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's systems and the terrible ticking countdown dot at 3 seconds. A light on the communication console flashed a unique encrypted pattern. It was the code. The unconditional surrender code transmitted directly from the office of the VOR Supreme, the leader of the Cathari High Command. Signal received. The communications officer yelled, his voice cracking with relief. It's verified. It's the full surrender. Minho closed his eyes for just a second. The cold emptiness inside him did not fill with warmth. It just settled heavier. Hold fire. Acknowledge the signal. Transmit the first set of disarmament coordinates. The order went out. Across the Cathari home fleet, the effect was instantaneous. The energy readings from their weapons faded. Their engines powered down. One by one, like lights going out, the mighty fleet became inert, drifting metal. On the surface, the feed showed crowds gathered around the spire. They were not cheering. They were not rioting. They were just standing, staring up, as if waiting for a sun that had decided not to rise. The peace, when it came, was not celebratory. It was a funeral. The human fleet did not land on Cathar Prime in triumph. They sent automated overseer ships and engineering teams. Their job was not to rebuild, but to dismantle. Under the watchful eyes of human drones, the Cathari began the long, humiliating process of scuttling their own warships, deorbiting their weapon platforms, and opening their databases. A month later, Captain Minho stood on the observation deck of the Vengeance, which now orbited a quiet, disarmed Cathar Prime. Sergeant Taiyuan found him there, looking down at the world. We're being recalled to Earth, sir, Taiyuan said. The first oversight governor is arriving next week. Our part is done. Minho nodded. What do you think of our victory, Sergeant? Taiyuan was quiet for a long time. He thought of the pit on Avon Prime. He thought of the silent, sleeping Cathari on Tylus Moon. He thought of the great spire still standing. It doesn't feel like winning, sir. It feels like we infected them with our grief, with our anger. We made them afraid, and then we forced them to live in that fear forever. That is exactly what we did, Minho said. Admiral Quan understood. True peace cannot be built on the memory of their victory, or on the hope of our forgiveness. It can only be built on the absolute certainty of our retaliation. We have become the keepers of that certainty. It is a terrible job. Back on Earth, Admiral Quan stood before the Unified Earth Council. The chamber was packed, but utterly silent. He looked older, the weight of the last few months bowing his shoulders. The Cathari Collective is dissolved, he said, his voice echoing in the quiet. Their military capability is reduced to a local police force under our supervision. The genocide of Haven Prime will never be repeated by them, or by any species who learns of what happened here. A council member stood. Admiral, the methods used, the psychological warfare, the threat of planetary annihilation, many are calling them monstrous. Have we become the very thing we fought? Quan looked at the man, then at the others. A monster is a mindless thing of hunger and rage, he said. We were not mindless. We were precise. We were not hungry for destruction. We used its specter to force an end to destruction. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Civilization is not a state of being. It is a tool. We used the tools of diplomacy until they broke in our hands. So we picked up a hammer. We did not enjoy it. We did not glorify it. We used it once, decisively, for everyone in the galaxy to see. He leaned forward, his hands on the podium. And now we will keep that hammer. We will keep it clean and sharp and forever in sight. Not because we want to use it, but so that no one, ever again, looks at humanity and thinks they are weak. They are chaotic. They can be erased. Our strength is no longer a secret. Our mercy is now a choice we make, not a limitation we suffer. That is the peace we have bought. It is a cold peace, a brutal peace, but it is peace. In his quarters on the Vengeance, Minho packed a small bag. On his desk was a single black stone plaque, identical to the ones left on Taylor's moon. It was engraved with one word, Haven. He picked it up. It was cold and heavy. He did not take it with him. He left it on the empty desk, a paperweight for the next Captain Dot, as his shuttle descended toward Earth. Breaking through the clouds to show the green and blue of the homeworld, he felt no joy. He felt the weight that Quan had spoken of. The weight of the hammer. The weight of being the one who had looked at the abyss, and who now had to walk back into the sunlight, carrying its shadow. They had stopped the monsters. To do it, they had to stand at the edge of becoming monsters themselves. The victory was that they had stepped back, but they would forever stand closer to that edge than anyone else. They were the guardians now, the guardians of a brutal, silent peace, under a sky they had made safe by showing everyone how easily they could make it burn.